Dollar Shave Club does not sell a dollar razor anymore. It sells a shaver for $50 on a shelf at Target under a brand Unilever bought for $1 billion and then paid to give away. Larry Bodner runs it now, and his job is to sell $50 hardware under a name that promises $1. I can show you the exact line where the dollar stopped working, and it has been sitting in a 2012 order form the whole time. It is not a story about greed, and it is not really about Unilever either. The line is dull near the bottom of the form, and almost nobody read it out loud. Once you have seen it, you can explain the whole thing. It shows why $1 billion was a fair price and a bad buy at once, why the boxes kept costing more, and why the razor ended up at 50. It also explains the other razor company in this story. That one tried to sell itself, got blocked by the United States government, and today it is worth several times what it would have taken. That form belonged to a company Michael Dubin founded with Mark Levine in 2011 out of a space in Venice, California. A year later, he spent $4,500 on a video. He walked through a warehouse, held up a razor, and said the big brands were charging you for engineering you never asked for. 12,000 people ordered in the first 48 hours. The site fell over. That video would go on to pass 27 million views, which means no razor brand has ever bought that much notice for so little. The orders are the famous part of that story. The price list is not. Dubin was not selling one razor, he was selling 3. The cheapest was called the Humble Twin, 2 blades $1 a month, and above it sat a 4-blade plan at $6. At the top, a 6-blade handle called the Executive at $9. 3 plans, and the company named itself after the cheapest one. And the Humble Twin, the plan this whole brand is named after, did not cost $1. It cost $1 for the blades and $2 for shipping. $3 a month, every month, for the cheapest thing they made. No one hit it, and it was printed right there on the page. But the number people repeated was 1 because 1 is the number that fits inside a joke, and the joke was doing the selling. If you ever signed up for a dollar razor, go look at what your last box really cost you. So what was the dollar for? It was a door charge. You do not make money on the door. You make money on what the person buys once they are inside. Nightclubs have run on this for a century. The dollar was the cover charge, and the $6 plan was the bar. A $1 plan gets a credit card into your system for the price of a candy bar. From there you sell upward. The $6 plan, the $9 plan, shave butter, wipes, hair paste. The blades were just the excuse to open an account, and the account was what they were actually selling. For a few years that worked well. The hardest cost in this trade is getting a stranger to hand over a card number the first time. The internet had handed Dubin that for free 12,000 times in 2 days. By 2016, the firm had 3.2 million people on standing orders and was on track for around $200 million in sales. More than that, it had the one thing a giant cannot build: a direct line to a few million men who had already given it their card details. In July of that year, Unilever paid $1 billion in cash. It was the largest exit an online-only brand had ever had, which is why a much smaller razor firm in New York called Harry's was watching all of it very closely. $1 billion for $200 million in sales is a huge price for a razor firm. But Unilever was not buying a razor firm. It was buying a mailing list with a razor stapled to it. Each big soap and food maker on earth has the same blind spot. They sell through Walmart and Target, which means Walmart and Target know who the shopper is, and they do not. Unilever makes soap and tea and ice cream for millions of people it has never met. Dollar Shave Club had 3 million names, addresses, card numbers, and shaving habits coming back fresh every month. So what does a soap company do with 3 million shaving habits? It stops guessing. And at first, the bet looked right. Gillette had owned the American razor aisle for 100 years at prices that made people angry enough to share a video about it. Dollar Shave Club pulled share off it. By 2018, it was reported at about 8.5% of the United States market. Gillette cut its prices in public and named the online sellers as the reason. It was working. For a while, it read like a clean win because the giant had bought the upstart. The upstart kept taking share, and the old king blinked first. 6 years later, the giant wrote the brand down and went hunting for someone to take it off their hands. Bodner inherited what was left of it, and his version of the years in between is that a big company squeezed the life out of a small one. He has a case, and Unilever's own results back part of it. The 2012 price list adds the part he leaves out. The exact thing that made Dollar Shave Club grow that fast is the thing that capped it. If that is right, the ceiling was in the math from the first day. and this stops being a story about one brand. It becomes a test of whether cheap, small, heavy-to-post things can be sold by mail at all, and that answer is already written down in the accounts of the one rival that was never allowed to sell. Go back to the $2. Shipping is not a fee, it is the business. A parcel costs what a parcel costs. Someone picks it off a shelf, boxes it, labels it, and hands it to a driver who takes it to one house. That chain costs about the same whether the box holds a laptop or 4 razor blades. Blades weigh a few grams and sell for a few dollars, so the postage is not a slice of the price, it is a huge piece of it. Now compare that with how a razor reaches a store where one truck leaves a warehouse carrying 500 razors and stops once. The shipping cost per razor is pennies. That is the whole reason the razor aisle exists at all. Try it at home. Post 4 razor blades to a stranger and see what the stamp costs you. A subscription tears that up. Instead of one trip carrying 500 razors, you are paying courier rates on a stick of gum over and over to every house in America 12 times a year, which means growth does not rescue you. A software firm doubles its users and its costs hardly move. Dollar Shave Club doubled its users and doubled its postage, its boxes, its warehouse staff, and its support desk. Every new subscriber walked in carrying their own $2, which is an awkward thing to work out about a brand you have just paid $1 billion for. You were never buying a cheap razor. You were buying postage with a blade in it. So why not just charge more? They did charge more. Then Dollar Shave Club did the one thing it was built to avoid and walked into the stores. Prices climbed and the dollar plan stopped being the front door. Then the brand built on skipping stores went into stores. Walmart in 2020, then Target, until by early 2021, it was sitting in about 40,000 of them. The disruptor had gone and bought shelf space from Walmart. Every one of those doors fixes the postage problem and opens a new one. The store moves the razors cheaply and takes a cut for doing it, so the margin you refused to hand a store in 2012, you now hand over. Then you pay for the shelf space with ads, which is the exact game Gillette had been winning for 100 years. Bodner, who took the job in late 2023, says the owners made it worse. His word for what they did to the brand voice is neutered, and he says they made it too corporate and lost the humor that lived on the edge. They also slowed the push into stores because they were afraid of upsetting their own website. Unilever's own language was quieter. In its results for the end of 2022, it called Dollar Shave Club marginally profitable, which means barely making money. The brand, it said, had continued to decline in a fiercely competitive market. Its performance, they wrote, had not met expectations. Then it took the write down. In October of 2023, it sold 65% of Dollar Shave Club to a buyout firm called Nexus Capital and kept 35%. The price was never disclosed. Subscribers had fallen from about 4 million at the peak to about 3. Put that beside what Unilever paid for it. 7 years after writing that check, the giant was handing most of the brand to someone else and declining to say for how much. And all through those same years, the other razor company had been trying and failing to sell itself. Harry's launched in 2013, 2 years behind, selling razors online the same way, except it got into stores earlier and it never got a viral video. In 2019, its founders agreed to sell to Edgewell, the company behind Schick, for $1.37 billion, more than Unilever had paid. The deal never happened. In February of 2020, the Federal Trade Commission sued to stop it. The government's case was blunt. Gillette and Schick had been sitting in what it called a comfortable duopoly, two firms with the aisle to themselves, charging Americans high prices for decades. Harry's was one of the only forces pushing back. Letting Schick buy that pressure would, in the FTC's words, eliminate one of the most important competitive forces in the shaving industry. A week later, Edgewell walked away. So Harry's was stuck. It could not cash out, which meant it had to keep running the business. What it did with those years is the part that stings. It built a deodorant brand called Loom and a women's razor brand called Flamingo. It bought a high-end diaper maker called Co2Re. It renamed the whole group Mammoth Brands. None of it was razors by mail. In 2024, it did $835 million in revenue, with close to $100 million left over. It has been growing more than 20% a year. It has hired JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, Barclays, and Wells Fargo to prepare a public listing. Look at those two numbers side by side. Unilever paid $1 billion once for a business selling $200 million a year. Harry's, the company that was not allowed to sell, now moves more than 4 times that on its own. Which leaves the question of what the brand Unilever paid to walk away from is selling right now. The short answer is that it got loud again, and then it went up market. What came first in January? It ran a campaign built around a fake handheld gadget that beeps when it detects nonsense. The tagline ends, "On a word broadcast TV will not carry." They wanted the spot in the Super Bowl. NBC read it and said, no, because federal rules bar that word on air. So the brand that got famous for swearing in a warehouse was thrown off the biggest stage in advertising for swearing. The joke held up. It refused to record a clean version and put the whole thing online instead, but allowed only sells what you already make. So in April, it made something it never had. A women's line, a 6-blade razor aimed at a market worth about $1.8 billion. Partner described the campaign as anti-Venus, anti-Billy, anti-Flamingo. Venus belongs to Gillette, Billy belongs to Edgewell, Flamingo belongs to Harry's. The first women's campaign in company history picks a fight with the two firms that beat it and the one that got away. Picking that fight means selling to people who were never in the club, and so does what came next. On the 2nd of June, it launched Electrics, a body trimmer, a beard trimmer, an electric razor for your face, and a head shaver, $50 each, a detail trimmer at $30, waterproof USB-C, an hour of battery. $50 tools have to be seen to be sold. So right now as you watch this, the brand is running a 10-city tailgate tour through college football season. It runs all the way to the 22nd of November with athletes from Texas, Ohio State, and Michigan. Meanwhile, the Humble Twin is still on the website, the plan this brand took its name from, the one that cost $1. It sells for $6. So the dollar was never really a price. It was a punchline that happened to be billable. $4,500 bought the cheapest, loudest ad this business has ever seen. It worked so well that the company wore that price in its name for 14 years after the math stopped holding up. When free attention stopped being free, the dollar had to go. The name stayed because the name is the only thing that a video left behind. When a price looks far too low, ask what the seller is buying with it. That shelf at Target is the easiest place to practice. There is an electric shaver on it. $50 in a box with a name that promises $1. A consumer goods giant paid $1 billion for that name, then paid again to be rid of it. None of that is a scandal. It is what happens when a number invented to sell a video gets treated like a business plan. When a thing arrives at your door for less than it costs to send, you are not the customer yet. You are the acquisition. The real price lands later, and these days it lands on a shelf. No one outside these firms knows what Nex has paid for Dollar Shave Club. That number was never printed. Mammoth's numbers are a different matter. It has hired the banks, and firms that hire those banks end up publishing their books, and those books settle which of these two pick it right. I am reading them the day they land. Subscribe and you get the numbers with the spin taken out.